You got me?
What's up, my man?
Oh, what's
You
up?
got me?
I think I've got you muted.
Mm,
Maybe not.
I'm connected. Yeah. You got me?
How about now?
Yeah, I don't know where.
Yeah.
Go ahead, tap me
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, I got you
Yeah.
now. Okay. All right, we're recording. How's it going?
Yeah. I'm gonna set up my audio because I don't think I'm hearing you on my headset. There we go. Hold on. All right. We should be good
Got it?
now.
No, sweet.
Yeah. You got me?
Yeah, I got you.
All right, that's tits. Well, at least we need to do some com checks, homeboy. Come on, man. I taught you better
Apparently.
than that. What's up, brother? We got
Yeah.
to do a little bit of com checks next time.
Yeah, maybe we should do a test run before we do the actual thing.
Yeah.
How you doing?
So what's up? I'm doing, bro. I'm doing. I'm getting older, feeling a little age catching up, but I'm surviving, my man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. About the same. About the same. How old are you now?
44.
44. Wow. How old were you when you joined the military?
So I joined when I was 17, technically. I did the delayed entry program. And
Right.
so I joined right before my 18th birthday. And I set it up so that I could leave the day after I graduated high school. So day after I graduated high school, I picked up my bags, walked across the stage, and next morning, I was in Fort Benning, Georgia, with the most trees I've ever seen in my life, man.
Yeah, I
I
bet.
grew up in California, San Diego mostly, but also in El Paso, Texas. So both places, not so many trees. But man, I mean, I remember flying into Atlanta and just there was just trees everywhere. And then as we drove from Atlanta to Columbus, it was like if they just cut a path in a fucking ginormous forest, you know?
Yeah, that's
And that's
exactly what
all
we
it
do.
was. And
Yeah.
I was just freaking mesmerized, man. So yeah, I mean, I got to Fort Benning in May of 1999, and I ended up getting to 30th AG on like a 4 day weekend or something. So it was like nobody was there, right? So I show up and they like throw us some PTs and tell us the chow hall hours, but there was like nobody there. So it was just like a bunch of fucking crazies just running around, people acting the fool. And I'm just like, what the hell's about to happen? You know, nobody knows. It's like I thought it was like supposed to be the calm before the storm, but it was
Yeah.
just the storm before what happened when they got back from that 4 day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get you, man. I was born and raised in Wyoming, so we have mountains here, but comparing trees, you just can't compare it to down south. It's a culture shock for sure.
It is.
For
It is,
sure.
man. It's the trees, I think. And the sheets of rain, brother. When it rains, like they ain't nothing like Georgia rain. When it comes in
No.
and it's just sheets of rain, and I had never seen anything like that. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah. Gets pretty addicting too. Kind of miss it at times.
Yeah, for
So,
sure, for sure.
when'd you get out officially?
So officially, I got out on January 30th, 2023. So
24
like a
years.
year ago, 2 years. Well, technically like 2 years ago, going
2
on
years
two
ago.
years.
Then you
Yeah, it
retired.
was. Yeah, so as soon as I retired, yeah, I got out as a sergeant major out of Fort Bragg. I was with the Airborne Cav unit at Fort Bragg. That was actually a pretty good group of dudes. And ended up hanging out with them for a bit. But as I retired, I ended up transitioning to another job. So I got out like on the 30th of January officially, and I started my
Yeah.
job on the 30th of January officially. So my new job, I started the day that I had like left the army. There's no time there, so
No, there's no time there.
pretty.
Well, at least you had something to roll into. Like when I got out, I don't know if you knew that I got out as Sergeant First Class. I officially did
Hmm.
before I got out. But yeah,
Hmm.
I didn't really have anything to roll into. I rolled home and luckily I had a buddy here that got me a roustabout position at an oil field company. So I went and
Okay.
did that for a little bit, and then I went and drove truck for a little bit. But now I'm one of the lead operators out at the acid manufacturing plant that or acid refinery that I work at. So it's doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. Who pays the
Right
bills?
on, dude.
I don't
Right
have
on,
to.
dude.
I get to sleep in my own bed every night, so it's great.
Right on. Ain't nothing like
Don't
it
have to
on
travel.
pillow.
No, no.
It's
What are you
fucking
doing now?
awesome. So I work for Lockheed Martin. Um, I'm a satellite software engineer, a senior satellite software engineer for Lockheed Martin, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, yeah, that was the gig, man. As I was getting out of the military, I ended up getting medically out of the military as well because of my stomach and my back, and I have a bunch of medical issues that just kind of caught up to me all at like once, right?
Yeah,
So I ended up getting medically discharged out of the military, but as I was getting out, I had about 6 months before I made that transition. And what I did is I took advantage of they're not really well, they call them there's a couple of words for them. It's like when you do like an internship almost.
yeah.
So there's two things. There's a thing called an internship and a thing called a fellowship. The difference
Hmm.
between an internship and a fellowship, internship is more designated towards like an open type of a entry level position. I'm going to come into an entry level position, but I'm going to work for you for free. I'm going to learn the ropes, and then as I transition, I'll come in.
Yeah,
Whereas you look at a fellowship's more of a executive position or more of a senior position. Do the same thing. You're going to work for them for a little bit, but there's a kind of a understanding there that at the end of this set period of time, they're going to offer you a position. So what I did is I took advantage of a couple of these fellowships that the military offered. And what they did is essentially what you did is just you kind of give them a pretty good resume slash CV, and they pump it out, right? And there's a bunch of companies that are part of the sponsorship of the program, and so they all get first dibs at everybody's resume. And depending on how interested they are, they may call you up for a an interview. And so I got, I had a few companies looking looking to hire me. And so that made me feel better, right? Because I wasn't really sure on that whole transition thing. Like the big thing
hmm
was the money. Like I don't know if I'm going to make as much. What happens with my disability? What's retirement look like? It's just there's so many unknowns. But as soon as I secured a position, pretty much with this fellowship, I mean, I felt way better. And so Lockheed was
hmm
one of the companies that was interested. And so I interviewed with them, and yeah, we settled on a position that I have zero experience in, technical sense. So I mean, all the stuff that I work with, I've been on the user end of it, as have you.
Yeah,
The signals that we get on on our radios, the digital photos that we send, anytime we're dealing with satellites, we're on the user end, we're like always cursing the heavens, like, why don't I have a signal? Like that kind of shit.
yeah,
Now I know why, because now I'm on the other end of it and I'm on the technical side of it. And so, getting hired on there, it's all really on the job training, and you go through these certifications and you learn the systems, and you learn how to how to run your little piece of the mission. But the real thing that I think was a seller for me getting hired on was the TS clearance, right?
oh, I bet. Yeah.
I don't think I don't think we emphasize how important it is for our service members as they're getting out, especially as the senior service members on achieving that TS clearance. The TS clearance is it's huge, right? I mean, it's the difference between getting a job that's paying over 100K to a job that you're paying 45, 50K, and it's not cool. So I was fortunate enough to carry a TS clearance for most of my career since I started in the special operations community. And yeah, man, I ended up having to get another TS clearance at this position, but this one was different. I had to get a TS with poly. So,
hmm
I mean, I had to go do a whole polygraph and make sure that I was who I said I was and what I wasn't going to do and all that kind of jazz. So I think it's funny because I'm the last fucking person that's going to sell any fucking secrets. Come on, man. But yeah, so
Yeah,
I got fortunate, man. And like much kind of like you, like we're good. We're comfortable where we're at, and
yeah.
we got what we need, and we're happy.
Good, good. Rolling back, why don't you start? Tell us about your early life. What made you want to join the military? How that first couple of years in the
Sure.
military went, and how that kind of laid
Kind of
out your career.
ultimately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
laid out
Yeah,
your
yeah.
career.
Sure, sure. So I always tell people that I joined the military for all the wrong reasons, like 100% the wrong reasons. I was absolutely about me. I didn't know how I was going to be able to get out of my house. I know I didn't have money for college. I didn't know how to apply for college. I didn't know any of that stuff. I didn't have anybody to kind of mentor me in that direction. So I think my choices were kind of limited. Somebody just so happened to call, a recruiter ended up calling my phone at the house looking for a different person. And I was like, hey, yeah, no, wrong guy. And he's like, all right, well, are you interested in joining the military? And I said, sure. And then he was like, what the hell? So, yeah, so we set it up, right? So I
Hmm.
joined because I wanted to get out of my house. And I joined because I wanted to get some money for college. So I ended up getting, I think it was like $50,000 for college, which at the time was pretty good.
Yeah.
And and I was supposed to come in as a cook out of all the jobs. I had been cooking at a pizza joint. And so they said, hey, what do you currently do? And I said, I'm a cook. And they're like, oh, we can do that. We can work with that. So they were going to get me a cook. But the soonest job for or date for a cook was 3 months. And I'm like, I'm not going to
Well,
wait three
let me
months.
just say I'm glad that path didn't work out for you, bro.
I know, right? Imagine
I
that. Oh
yeah.
man.
I'm
If the
oh
people that
man.
like know us and know me for sure be like, well,
Oh shit.
that could have been
Yeah.
different.
Let's
It could have
just
been
put
different.
that out there right now that I'm glad that career path did not work out for you.
So yeah, I was like, nah, man, that's not gonna work. And so then they came back with like, hey, we got this job. It's infantry. And I'm like, okay, what's that? He's like, Army stuff. And I'm like, okay. They're like, yeah, we got this cool contract. It's called the Airborne Ranger contract. And I'm like, okay, I had no idea what that is. I said, okay, cool. That sounds great. How soon can I leave? They said you can leave the day after you graduate high school. I said, sold. And then the kicker was like, oh, we give you a $3,000 bonus. So I was like, oh, fuck, for real. I'm rich. I'm rich, bitch. Like, I was like, you know what I mean? So, so, little did I had no idea what an airborne ranger was. I didn't know special operations was. I didn't know what airborne was. I didn't know what any of this things was, but, I kind of went along with it, right? I get to, fast forward, I get to Fort Benning, Georgia, and, and I find out what the infantry is really quickly, right? Because that's pretty simple. But nobody really still knew what Rangers were, right? And you had those barracks rats that think they know what they are because they saw a movie or they read a book, but really nobody knew,
Yeah.
except for the only two people that I knew had any idea were two people that had scrolls, right? So there was two Somalia vets that were actually drill sergeants in my company, um, and I knew that they had an idea because of the patch, and that's all I knew. But I was too scared to ask them.
Hmm.
So I didn't. I went the entire cycle, man, like 17 weeks of training, like not even asking them one fucking question about it, and they would have probably been the best people to ask. Maybe the worst. I don't know, but yeah, man. So yeah, we graduate basic and it was all fun and whatever. And we go to airborne school. And then right after we graduated airborne school, these guys show up. These guys had black berets and
Hmm.
they looked a little different than everybody else. They looked like they would fucking reach down your throat, rip your soul out, like as you sat there. They were
Hmm.
not to be trifled with. You could tell, man, they were just different. Something was something about them. And they called everybody, hey, if you have a RIP at that point, at that time, it was called RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program. If you have a RIP contract, come over to this formation over here. So, like, we had a little formation. There was probably about 10 of us sitting in that formation. And they introduced us to things that I didn't know that you could do. Gravity was interesting. I didn't know that it was that strong on you. I mean, I
Yeah.
sweat. I mean, we got just our ass handed to us because that was the first opportunity for you to quit. All right, they're like,
Yeah.
hey, yeah, you can quit if you want. And no one said anything. I'm like, well, let's warm up a little bit or whatever. So they crushed us. But then nobody quit then. And then they were like, all right, grab your bags and let's go. So at that point, you had to actually run with your shit from airborne school to the RIP barracks, which was about 2.5 miles up the road. But they ran pretty quick.
Hmm.
And you had bags and shit, right? But it was straight chaos, man. The whole time we were there, from when we got there to when they let us go to sleep, it was just complete. Just all the idea then was not so much to teach you, it was just to break you. They wanted to see who was actually there and who really wanted to do what they thought they were about to do. And that's when I actually
Yeah.
got introduced to what an airborne ranger was at RIP. Um, it was actually at holdovers. Holdovers, we had to wait about 2 weeks before we started the RIP class. And that's when I found out what I had signed on for. I never like at that point, I mean, I'm already committed, man.
Yeah.
You're young and you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what to be scared of or to second guess. And I was a hoss. I mean, I was running sub 11 2 miles. I was running. I was rucking. I was a big. I was good. I was good, and so I was pretty sure with myself. But yeah, man. So yeah, anyway, we waited 2 weeks, and then during those 2 weeks, all you do is details and wait to go to start RIP. And at that point, when I went through RIP in '99, RIP was 3 weeks long, and those 3 weeks were just a smoke fest. We did some stuff. They taught us some ranger history. We did some knots. We did some land naving, but for the majority of it, it was just PT. PT, like I had never experienced.
Hmm.
It was tough stuff, man. It was really tough stuff. It was not sleeping. They didn't let you sleep. They would wake you up in the middle of the night just to fuck with you. Um, they were these fucking mammoths of I just remember I always thought they were like giants, bro. Like honestly. Like I got there, I'm like, who are these fucking people? Because they were just big people and they could fucking ruck like you couldn't fucking believe. Like that was what I was in the that was the biggest like moment for me. PT wise in terms of running, it was fine. Physical stuff for the most part, I was okay. But when it came to rucking, I couldn't ruck. I couldn't walk that. I didn't know you could walk like that. Like you don't have the muscles developed at that point to ruck, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the biggest thing I remember being in awe of, man, of these rip cadre, of just the way they could fucking ruck, just the way they could ruck. But yeah, man. So it was 3 weeks of was fucking hell. It was 3 weeks of hell. Uh, and it all culminated at this place called and anybody who's ever been in regiment or ever been through RIP or what is now RASP is
Rasp.
there's
Yeah.
a little place called Coal Range. Coal Range is where I believe most people that go through RIP will see Jesus truly for the first time. He'll poke his little head out of the wood line and wave his hand at you and tell you to come over and you'll be drawn into the wood line looking for him all night long and back and forth and it was man that was like a 3 days of no sleep of the fastest I've ever rucked and the worst I've ever got fucking smoked. And God, man, it was really fucking tough. But what it did do is it was the first time I was really tested. I had never been tested before, right? And you don't know your true potential or lack thereof until you test yourself or if you've been tested. And it could be physically tested, it could be emotionally tested, it could be whatever, but you have to be tested
Yeah.
because you just at that point you just don't know. And I know that I had never been tested before like that. And so that was the first time that I got tested, right? And I learned a lot about what I could do, what I couldn't do, and understanding uh, how to push through certain pain and misery, right? But yeah, man, when we finished RIP, and they give you an opportunity to pick a battalion to go to. There's 3 battalions. There's the Savannah's got 175, 275s over in Washington, Fort Lewis, and then you have 375 or headquarters is as well, and that's down at Fort Benning. But I wanted to go to Savannah because I heard Savannah was the party fucking base. Because Savannah was by the beach, man. Savannah was by the beach. There was supposed to be this girls' college that was there. It's called SCAT. Come on, man. Seriously, like what?
Yeah, I
Um,
got you.
so
Yeah.
uh so I tried, man, and they, they told me to fucking pounce in and they sent me to 375. 375's fucking right across the street. So I'm like, oh, I'm never leaving fucking Fort Benning. And I didn't for 10 years. I was at Fort Benning for fucking 10 years. But looking back at it, going to 375 was the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was one of these things in the military that the next thing was the best thing that ever happened to me. When I first got into the military, leaving my house and not being dependent on anybody else was the best thing that ever happened to me. Then I got to Fort Benning, right? And I started training and I started seeing like what my body could do. And that was the best thing that has ever happened to me. Then I
Yeah.
got to RIP. I got tested at RIP. I came out, I felt like I was stronger and I understood me. That was the best thing that ever happened to me. And these things kept getting better in the army. And what that was doing was I think changing the mindset that I had from the I joined the military for me to get money to go to college, to get away, and it turned into more of a service type of a mindset. Of this is my job. I'm gonna fucking crush it. Like this is what I'm gonna try to do anyway. And yeah, man, once I got to battalion, I was very fortunate to have a squad leader that took a completely different approach to how he trained his brand new people, his young Rangers. Um, the tradition had always been that you get there and you get smoked. You just get beat
Yeah.
up. You get crushed, you get initiated, you get hazed, whatever you call it. But it was like a rite of passage, right? Like, oh, you made it through RIP that we haven't made it yet, like type of a thing. And the way they taught you is just through Ranger learns by two methods, pain and repetition. Those are
Yeah.
the only way that we learn, through pain and repetition. And old traditions really, really, really focused on those two things. But my squad leader, I was his first official like private, like his first. He had just got pinned E5,
Okay.
or so he was E5. He was going to get pinned E6, but he was
Okay.
an E5 squad leader, and so he was like, "You're my first guy." And so he decided to take a different approach, and so he didn't fucking crush me. Um, he taught me. He explained to me what I did wrong. He showed me how to do it correctly, and then he held me accountable from then on. Which was different. Before it was like, what's wrong with you? You don't know how to do this? Oh, you're so fucked up. Like one of those things. Where
Yeah.
his approach was like, I know you don't know how to do this. Let me show you. I've shown you. Now it's on you. And if you don't know it, then I'm gonna fucking hold you accountable type thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was a different approach, man. And I think that kind of set me on the right path on how to treat people. Um, how to hold people accountable, fuck yeah, but still how to treat people, man. How to there's a you don't got to be an asshole all the time,
No.
but just understanding that different people react differently, and so I think that kind of set me up on the right path from there, man. But like I said, I spent 10 years in regiment, and I started as a E1 and I left as a sergeant first class. So as a brand new private, saw gunner to platoon sergeant. And so I had the opportunity and the privilege to, serve in every one of those positions. I deployed 10 times with regiment. I took part in both invasions, both Afghanistan and Iraq. And we were in Afghanistan a month after 9/11. And so, I spent time in all the shitty places you can think of in all the shitty times, right? I spent time in Fallujah, in Ramadi, in Baghdad, Tikrit, Kirkuk. I spent times all over Iraq and Afghanistan. And I had the opportunity to work with some really cool individuals. And I think I had the opportunity to mold some as well, right? To push them to to better units, and those some of those people are still serving. So, that first initial contract of what I thought was going to be 4 years and 17 weeks ended up turning into, 10 years in regiment alone, uh,
Yeah.
and and staying in for all the right reasons. Why did I stay in? I stayed in because of the boys. You stay in because of the boys. It's not about
Yep.
you and about the pay and the 4 days and shit. You stay in because of
Well,
your guys.
it's definitely not
That's
about
why.
the pay. Definitely not about the pay.
No,
That's for
that's
sure.
not.
That's not for
Yeah.
sure. Um, what about that early career highs and lows of that Ranger Regiment? What period?
So I think what the highs and lows of serving in the regiment while I was there, I think the biggest thing is we were we were we were one-sided soldiers, Rangers. We were one-sided. And then I mean that I'll explain that. We were one-sided in that we were lethal. We could
Yeah.
locate close with and destroy the enemy by fire maneuver and or close combat. That's what we did, and we did it well. We were the most elite light infantry unit in the world, bar none. Killers, 100%. And we were tactically savvy. We were amazing when it came to that sense. But if you look at like the whole soldier, when it came to administratively, if it came to leadership difficulties, if it came to actually developing soldiers, maturing, all that kind of stuff, we didn't see that in regiment. And we didn't see that because the people that were in regiment wanted to be there. And the people that were in regiment didn't fuck up. They didn't get DUIs and they didn't do drugs and they didn't beat their wives and they didn't do whatever. They wanted to be there and they showed up every day and they gave you 100% and you got shit done and it was impressive. But I never had any of those leadership difficulties while I was in regiment. So that was a good and bad thing, right? That was a good thing. I never had to deal with that shit. It was awesome. Bad thing is I never had to deal with that shit because when I left regiment and I went out to the big army, I got introduced to all these things like ABCP. Like, oh my God, people can be overweight. Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
people fail PT tests very much. Like all these things. Like people stay on profile for over a year. Yes, they do. Like all these things. And I was ill-equipped to deal with it. So I had to learn very quickly. But I think the good thing about being in regiment is that it teaches you to really to adapt to your environment and really see the situation through. You're going to fight on to the Ranger objective, right? It's going to get done. And so uh, it developed, I always look at it as like, I learned so much early in my career, and I did so much that it set me up for success for the rest of my career. Those 10 years set me up for success for the last 13, 100%. The work ethic, the mental focus, the way to treat people, the way to see things, produce results, good results, like those things. Like I learned all that while I was in regiment, and so that kind of it sets you up for success, man, for your entire career. So I was able to adapt pretty quickly. And so what it did is kind of force those muscles to grow, force those leadership development muscles to grow. Like, how am I actually going to develop leaders? How do I develop people who don't want to be developed? How do
Yeah.
you, how do you motivate people who don't want to be motivated? And yeah, you deal with it when you're in ranger school and shit. But it's 62 days and it's a school. We're talking about every day. And oh, by the way, you're going
Hmm.
to deploy next month, so figure it out. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so having to learn quickly how to do those things. And so like when I showed up to where I met you, when I showed up to Alaska, um, I was supposed to show up to Alaska a few months prior, but my orders got pushed to the right for like 4 months or
Mm,
something.
mm.
So the idea was that I was supposed to be up there about 6 months before we deployed, which didn't end up being 6 months. It ended up being 2 months. I
Yep.
got up there 2 months before we deployed. And as soon as I got onto the ground, I did my quick assessment of our platoon, understood what we were supposed to do, and I was like, we're not ready yet. I don't feel like we're ready as a platoon yet to be doing the things that they want us to do. Um, I know I'm not ready. I knew I wasn't because I was like, there's no way. I don't even know anybody. We're gonna leave in 2 months. And I was like, no. But we got ready quick. I got
Yeah,
comfortable quick. We got comfortable with each other quick. I think we understood that this was a serious thing, right? Like we're about to go into something, and so we got to be ready. Um,
yeah.
but yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
can tell you
yeah,
that I was a very broken individual when you showed up. I came from the 82nd before 425, obviously, and I ran into that leadership
yeah,
that you were talking about, the old school leadership where they just beat the shit out of you. Um, didn't care about your family, didn't care about this, didn't care about that. They just wanted results. You showed up to work, and that was it. They didn't want to hear about family, didn't want to hear about this. So it was quite different when you showed up to the platoon afterwards and actually took interest in your soldiers. Um, it pulled me out of a dark place, and I tried to mirror your leadership style um, in the remainder of my career, whatever it was. I know there was issues, but there's always issues. I was
right.
17. I had two kids at seven. Well, by the time I was 17, had been married. Grew up in a poor family. Didn't have a father. So you guys, you Sailor, and then one of my other squad leaders in the 82nd. You guys were my dads.
Yeah,
So
right.
that was it.
Yeah, man, I could tell you, um, I could tell you that when I showed up, I could see that people had been using abuse, right? I could tell. You could see, man. And it's not a good position to come into uh when people would you're expecting or you want these people to give you 100%. Like, man,
Mhm.
you just got on this train. I've been on this motherfucker for like the last 10 stops. Like, you know what I mean? So just acknowledging that. I mean, at the big, I always felt like if you took care of your people are going to take care of you. All right. And
Yeah.
my job is to make sure that I shield you guys from as much as I possibly can whenever I possibly can. Um, because I can recover from it, you know. I've been yelled at before. It's going to be okay.
Mhm.
But I think it's important that you take care of your people, man. It's just the most. I've always felt like it was the most important thing, um, ever, and so getting to the platoon, I could see where we all stood. And I told you before we went on deployment, I said before we went on deployment, I looked at you and I said, Andy, I'm going to work the shit out of you during this deployment. Get ready. I told you I was, and
Yeah,
it
I know.
didn't.
You
And
pulled me aside.
it doesn't
I
make it
remember.
any. It doesn't make it okay that we worked the fuck out of you, but at that point, you were absolutely the strongest NCO I had. And I knew that I had to depend on little Andy to get us at least established before we could start kind of spreading our little wings out. You know what I mean? But
Well, and it was fucking difficult, especially with three staff sergeants over top of me, man. Like I would step one way and I'd get fucking beat another. Like, no, I told you when to go do this. I was like, motherfucker, what do I do? You know what I mean?
yeah,
So it's like,
yeah.
god damn.
No,
So
yeah, yeah, it's good. You did well, man. Yeah, everybody did well. You all fucking crushed it, man. There was no issues. You guys did everything I asked you to do, um, and more. We were tested, and we all got
yeah,
tested in our own way. And so I think you guys were prepared. I think we were prepared as a platoon for what we were going to expect. I think we adapted pretty quickly once we got on the ground, and I think we operated well because we cared about each other, man, and we
yeah.
wanted to make sure that there was not one fucking hair on any one of you guys' heads that worth any one of those motherfuckers, not one. And I wasn't gonna have it either way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, yeah, yeah. That was that part of it, man. So that's the entry. That's the first. That's my first 10 years.
First 10
Uh,
years. Next 14.
yeah,
Next 14.
yeah. I can shoot that out in like 10 minutes because the next 14 were pretty uneventful, man. For the most part, like after I spent with the time up in Alaska, which was a great time. We got back from deployment, and then I went over and worked in the air. I was the air NCO for a little
Yeah.
bit, and then after I left Alaska, I got a gig down in South America, and so
Yeah,
I
I was
flew
going to talk to
down.
you about that. I was going to talk to you about that one. See if you could bring up Peru
Yeah. So I
because I know
got a
you went
gig
down there.
down in I got a gig down in South America, and I got hooked up with the gig because of a few things. One, they wanted somebody that could speak Spanish. They wanted somebody that was Ranger qualified, and then they wanted somebody that was promotable at the time. And I was I was promotable to E8, so I was going to be a first sergeant. Had I stayed in Alaska, they would have given me a first sergeant gig, but I didn't want to stay in Alaska. I wanted to go to Peru. I was done. I was done with Alaska at that point. Yeah, so I went down to Peru for a year, and I was part of it's called an FTT or field training team. It's pretty much it's a predecessor to an SF team, what SF teams were doing down there. But this is all conventional army. But you go down and you work out of the embassy. And so I worked out of the embassy. Maybe I was at the embassy maybe twice a week, maybe. But the most of the other time I was staying at the house. And so we lived off the economy. We had a couple of diplomatic vehicles, and we lived on this like 3 or 4 story, 8 bedroom fucking palace type thing that they had down there for us. And so all that got paid for us, man. And so our job while we were there, and I was the team chief, um, was to train the local special force police on counter narco tactics. And so what that meant was I came up with a 4 week course that concentrated on basic and advanced marksmanship, both pistol and rifle, some demolition training, and some medical training. And so those were the four pieces. Those are the four pieces that we would teach. And so I had two 11 Bravos, two 18s, and then two 68s. So I had two medics, two engineers, and then I had two infantry guys, and I'm an infantry guy, obviously. And so that's all we did. And so we came up with a course to teach him how to shoot, and then we taught him how to make explosives using the equipment we had plus the equipment they had, and then medical training. And like a second part, I guess, to this gig was like you're supposed to show them the equipment that we have so they can say, gee whiz, that looks great. I'd like to buy some of that. Can I?
Mm,
And then we can say, sure, here's the embassy's number. And then they call the embassy, and we just sold them a shitload of M4s and medical bandages and all the stuff that they're using because we just taught them how to use it, and it's way better than what they have, right? And
yeah.
so I went down there for that year, and we did a lot of training in Lima. Lima's where I was based, but we also went outside of Lima to different army bases and taught outside of Lima, and it was a super chill gig. It was definitely the most fun I've had. I had the entire time I was in the military for sure because I mean I put my uniform on like 3 times in a year, maybe. It was all, we had our own clothing allowance, and we had to have our suits, and we had to have our range equipment, and we had all kinds of, man, we had so much ammunition while we were down there. We would go down there, and it was a win-win for whichever unit would get to us first, or we would get to first. Because my guys would be like, "Hey, I want to try this area," and so we'd be like, "Oh, is there an army base?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, there's an army base here." I'm like, "All right, let's go drive out and see if they want us to train them." So we'd do a drive out there and stay in some nice hotel. Oh, nice hotel, and in Peru, yeah, and then find out if they want us to train them. But it was a win-win because what we would show up with was everything. All they had to show up with was with their weapons. We would show up with um, our own ammo and ammo for them as well. Our own demolition. We'd show up with all the equipment, all the explosives, everything, and all they had to do was show up for training. So why wouldn't they want Americans to teach them, right? And so we were pretty fucking hot commodity, man. We worked a lot with their They're Special Forces Police, or they're what we look at as SWAT is their Special Forces Police.
Okay.
And so we worked with them pretty closely, and it was pretty neat, man. It was pretty neat because you build these relationships with people, and they're like, "Hey, the stuff you taught us actually works." Like, we used it last week when we were in the jungle. We fucked these dudes up, and we're like, "All right, cool, good to know. We'll keep that in."
Good
And
to
so
know.
we had a good time. We had a good time. But I was there. I was able to go to all the places you see on Ancient Aliens, right? I saw, like, we went to all the cool Cusco and Machu Picchu, and up and down man, my wife and I, my wife flew out there, and we backpacked through Machu Picchu and some of the places down there, and it was fucking awesome, man. It was quite the experience. It was pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Do you
But
get to do
leaving
any tech?
there,
You get to do any tactical shit while you're down there?
no, we got to
Gotcha.
do some stuff, but nothing that was gonna get us into any more trouble than we would have already been in. So
I gotcha. Okay.
I didn't kill
Tracking.
anybody down there. So I didn't get shot at, really. So that was cool. But that was definitely a good that was a good deployment. It was a good I looked at it was a deployment. That was a very cool gig. And after I left there, I ended up going to Hawaii. I got a I got stationed at Schofield Barracks for about 3.5 years. And ended up going down there, and I went from so I when I left, when I got hired in at Schofield Barracks, I got hired in a cav unit, and I had never been in a cav. I don't know what the fucking cav was, like horses and Stetsons and cowboy boots and buckles. Well, like what? And so I'm like, me? I'm like, no. I'm like, I would much. I promise you that I would do really good for you in another place, and it would not be the calf. But I got the calf, man, and so they sent me to a calf unit at Schofield Barracks, and I got introduced to that side of the fight, sort of. And when I got there, I was part of a reconnaissance unit, but they were standing up a dismounted reconnaissance unit. So the reconnaissance unit was mounted at the time, kind of
Yeah.
strikers. They were using strikers on island, which was stupid because there's nowhere for the strikers to go. So it was the dumbest thing ever, but it was one of this whole idea of pre-staging strikers closer to the fight in the Pacific. Anyway, strikers do not work on Hawaii. So they were doing away with them. They wanted to keep their vehicles
Sort of like strikers in Wainwright.
in Alaska. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yes. So so they're trying to do away with the strikers. They wanted to keep their gun trucks, but no strikers. And what they wanted was a dismounted reconnaissance unit. Well, they
Okay.
never had a dismounted reconnaissance unit. Well, enter me. They're like, hey, first sergeant, you're gonna stand up our dismounted reconnaissance unit. We're gonna get you a bunch of 11 Bravos from the infantry units, and you're gonna stand up our first dismounted reconnaissance unit. And we're and here's the equipment that's all fucking old and shit, and make it work. And so I was like, Roger that. And
They didn't want to
so
pull their scouts into it.
so they did. They pulled some of their scouts, but they weren't going to give their scouts. They 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 disbanded an entire infantry battalion, and they took their scout platoon, and they
Hmm.
said, "Hey, scout platoon, we're gonna move you over to the dismounted reconnaissance unit at the Cav. If you want to stay in scouts, that's what we're gonna do." Half of those fuckers jumped shift. Like they were like, "Nope, don't want to do Cav. This is stupid." So they left. So we did have some scouts, but we didn't have like what we didn't. We had everything you can think of. It was a hodgepodge of people that we ended up getting.
Okay.
And they were good dudes, but they weren't all trained in scouts. They were not trained scouts. Uh, and so when we got them, the good thing is I had really strong PLs and platoon sergeants that were scouts, scout PL platoon sergeant. And so they had been to at the Fort Benning's reconnaissance school, or at least two of the PLs had. So I was comfortable-ish with what we had. So
Hmm.
the commander that came over was also the commander, like the HHC infantry, old HHC commander. So he had experience. So it wasn't like there was no experience. but they definitely didn't have any senior leadership experience. And I have some reconnaissance background with stuff that I did in regiment and whatever. So I ended up yeah doing we did well. We stood up the reconnaissance company or troop rather, and those guys did they did really well. We weren't liked very much because it was a very much like scout infantry mindset, like very separate, like and it wasn't like so much the infantry guys but at the same time, there was one of these things where they didn't think that we knew what we were doing, and we didn't think that they knew what they were doing, type thing. You know how
Yeah.
it is? Like you don't know what you've never worked with these guys before. So I think there was a lot of that. Um, but once we were able to see how they operated, I mean, these guys are squared away. Like these are some of the best senior NCOs that I saw run a truck. Like these guys knew what the fuck they were doing. And then once they saw that we knew what the fuck we were doing and we could do things that they couldn't do, then it was like, oh, we're on the same team. And then we were cool. But that took a little bit. It took a little bit.
I bet
But
it did. Yeah.
who better to bring two fucking completely different people together than me? So there I was,
Yeah. Well,
bringing them together. But yeah, man. So yeah, so we were there. And then I ended up getting, uh, I moved from the cav unit to an infantry unit. And I was an HHC first sergeant, of the Wolfhounds. I was there for a couple of years. Then I went to the academy, Fort Bliss, graduated the academy in 2020 and then got assigned to Fort Bragg where I was until 2022, 2023-ish. Um, and
they
yeah,
said
man,
you said they
that's
stuck you with scouts over at Bragg as well.
yeah, so when I got to Fort Bragg, they stuck me in a cav unit again.
Cav unit. Huh?
So yeah, so I ended up getting so when I got to Fort Bragg, I was a sergeant major, but I ended up going to the cav unit and that unit that I actually was going to, I was happy with going to because they were deployed. They were deployed in Syria. So they had deployed to Syria at the time. So I was like, fuck you. Let's fuck get RFI. I get my shit and I'm gone. Like, let's make this quick. You know what I mean? And so the family ended up staying in El Paso, where Fort Bliss is. I was at Fort Bragg. The idea was I was going to be at Bragg for a month, maybe a month and a half, just getting my RFI. And then I was going to push forward. And then we were going to, because there was still 8 months left on the deployment. So I was like, rock on, fuck another deployment, let's do it. But then I got to Fort Bragg, and the unit that I had got to had zero leadership. They had one senior leader that was ETSing and had his own shit going on. They had two officers that were supposed to be PCSing or slash ETSing, but expected them to still like run rear D, which isn't going to happen. Like, you got to
No,
let these
not a
guys
chance.
fucking, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, they put in
Yeah.
their time. Like, let these guys out. The fact that you didn't properly plan your loadout or what you were going to leave back here as your rear D package shouldn't they shouldn't have to pay for that. Like, you know what I mean? Like they should
Yeah.
not have to pay for that. But yeah, so I was like, holy fuck. And that was crazy, man. Like I showed up and I started walking around and I went the day before in civvies just to kind of scope out the area, just to see what it would look like and what they were, because it's supposed to be a duty day. So I was like, I'll just go, I think I went like at like 10:30, just to kind of walk around the AO to kind of scope it out. And I hadn't even signed into the unit yet. And so I started walking around and it was just like people were fucking around. Their tops were like tied around their fucking waist. Like they were just a bunch of kids fucking around. They're rear D, man.
Yeah.
They're rear
Yeah.
D. They have
Yeah.
nothing to do. There's none the leadership that is back there doesn't nobody's taking accountability of anybody. It just didn't seem like anybody gave a fuck. And the people that were back there were could only do so much. And they were trying, but oh, by the way, they're trying to get the fuck out of the army too. Um, and so yeah, so I started talking to the leadership back over forward in Syria. And I was like, hey, look, yeah, I'm all about going forward, just so you know what the picture looks like on the ground. And like as soon as I'm like describing all this stuff to them, like like the next day, like somebody got in trouble and like it was a bad, it was a really bad look. And so the boss was like, "Hey, you're not coming forward." And I said, "Excuse me, sir? Like I don't have a place to live. I'm living in a hotel right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm didn't plan on staying here. I'm ready to go forward." He's like, "No, we can't bring you forward because we don't have anybody to run rear D. And if we don't have anybody to run rear D, something bad's gonna happen back there." And like he didn't trust it. And so he asked, he didn't ask, and he's telling me I'm staying, right? And so
No.
what do you say? You know, like I hadn't even met the man yet, like really. So I can't put up a good fight quite yet, you know, to be like, hey. But I left the debate open. I was like, yeah, sir. I was like, I absolutely think it's a good idea that I stay here to set this stuff up. I mean, I can get stuff going, set stuff up, you know, get the systems going so that people know what's happening. And then once you feel more comfortable, then I can look at pushing forward, or we can, you know, talk about me pushing forward. So you kind of like tiptoed around it, you know, and he was cool with it. He's like, sounds good for Sergeant Major, whatever. But he still had no intention of bringing me forward. So yeah, man, I ended up just staying there and just setting up Birdie. And when I say setting up Birdie, I mean setting up
Ran the whole
Birdie,
fucking
like
thing.
raw, like fucking the whole thing, bro. I'm talking like we're setting up rosters. We didn't even have accurate rear D rosters. Like how many
Mm,
people do we have back here? I don't know. Like really, like one of those things.
hmm
I mean, setting everything up. I set the whole fucking thing up, man. And by the time these guys were coming back, or a couple of months, still, they were still deployed for a couple of months. We had everything was good. All the systems were in place. All our tasking orders were good. Like everything turned around. It was like it was a 180 turnaround. They were like, we don't know what you were doing, but whatever you did was amazing because you guys did it fucking amazing. They were just so happy that
mm,
somebody took the initiative to like make shit happen. And it wasn't that we didn't have the right people on Rear D. We just didn't have the right people in the right positions on Rear D.
yeah.
Um, so once we got that worked out, then it was fine, I think. Everybody was happy. Nobody got, I mean, we had a couple of suicides and drug overdoses and all the shit that you always have on Rear D, but yeah, it all worked out. It all worked out. And then yeah, man. And then I ended up getting out of the military because my
Yeah, I
body
remember
wouldn't
you were
give
having
up
some
on me.
medical issues right there at the end.
Yeah, I have a bunch of medical issues, man. I have a thing called ulcerative colitis, so I have ulcers in my intestines. My insides are all kind of fucked up. They're all like inflamed and shit. And then I have
Yeah.
my back is pretty jacked up from just airborne status of 17, 18 years. We
Army
had a
tanks.
couple of rollovers in
Yeah.
country. Uh, uh, yeah. So the body's kind of starting to make me pay a little bit for stuff. So it's all kind of catching up. And so yeah, I should have got out earlier though, man. Like looking back at it, I wasn't sure if I should have gotten out. I felt like I still had more to give back. Like, oh, I can give back more. I can, you know, mentor another NCO, or I can develop another soldier. Like I always felt like I could give back. But the more that I was giving, like to the military, I was taking away from my family. And I know you know this feeling, right? Like we all do. And so we're extremely selfish fucking human beings. And so we do these things. And so yeah, I just felt like it was time for me to get out. I probably should have done it a lot sooner. There's no You hear it from everybody, man. Like as soon as you're gone, right? Nobody gives a fuck about you. Nobody cares about how late you stayed. Nobody cares about all those that extra dry fire iteration you did to make sure your squad was squared away. Nobody cares about that now. Now,
Nobody.
the people that do care about it and the people that it matters for are the people that you're doing it with, your guys, your
Yep.
Joes.
Yep.
That's who it matters for, you know? So yeah, man. But being out was it was a good decision. It was the best decision I probably made because you know, I'm making way more money than I've ever made now for doing way more less than I've ever done in the past.
Oh yeah.
I have zero, like I always I always tell my wife that I have zero work stress, which is crazy coming from the environment that we came from, you know. But I have like I don't even think about my job until because I work in a skiff, so I have to go through like double doors and shit. But like as soon
Yeah.
as I go through the doors, then I think about, oh, okay, this is what I got going on, or this is what I'm gonna do. But and then when I zap out, I'm like, "Beep," and all I think about is like, all right, I'm gonna go home and go to
Yep.
sleep so I
Yeah.
can come
Yeah.
back
I'm
and do it
same
again.
same way. As soon as I'm home, it's done. As soon as I leave the gate, works off.
Yeah,
Don't have to think about
that's
it no
cool
more.
though, man. So you're it's awesome that you're doing well, man. It's awesome that you're doing well.
Doing good. Doing good. Doing good. Joined that Combat Vets Motorcycle Association, so that's going pretty good.
How's that doing for you?
Pretty cool. And it's doing pretty good. A lot of like-minded
Yeah,
individuals. There's not a lot of vets around here. Not a lot of vets. I mean, I don't hang out with anybody anyway, but so, but there's guys. We have a dark sense of humor, most of us. Uh,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
So
dude. So that was oh,
when I open my mouth and I can say something at work, everybody's like, "Oh, it's just fucking Ryan being Ryan again."
so
Now
are
over
you
there,
okay at work with it? Like, are people pretty? I
you
mean,
know, you know,
I'm sure you roll with a pretty rough and tough bunch. I don't think anybody's gonna get their fucking panties in a bushel if you say something.
at first I think they were taking it as because I have that resting asshole face, kind of take it as me being a
Yeah,
dick or
yeah,
trying to question their authority, especially being a young guy coming in and catching on as quick as I usually do. Uh,
yeah.
but I think they've adjusted. Pretty sure they have adjusted. They're wanting to promote me again, so we'll find out.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, I'm getting ready to move into. Well, hopefully, I did my interview this last week, but it's a technical writer position, so I'll be writing SOPs and then training operators and maintenance personnel on tasks out in the processing facility. So
It's a good gig for you, buddy.
I think so. I think so. Be
I
all
think
right.
that'd be a real good gig for you. You've always been good at being able to get a message across.
Yeah. I've
So
never been great at doing, so I might as well teach, right?
you can't do those who don't do what teach, and those who can't teach sports
That's
or
right. That's
coach
right.
sports.
So I'm gonna stop recording this now and then we can speak offline.
Yeah.
Okay.